now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for November 6th. Well, here we are with another day in the lovely world of tropics with two systems active. Tropical Storm Wanda, which is currently moving southwards in the Atlantic, and Tropical Depression 18E, which is looking pretty disheveled in the far eastern Pacific. There's 85 storms so far this year still, as we enter the 309th day of the calendar year. It's day 158 of Atlantic hurricane season, the only thing still being Tropical Storm Wanda, which has spent the last few days carving a bit of an erratic path in the northern Atlantic. It is expected to continue moving south before slingshotting itself northeast, turning extratropical. In the eastern Pacific, there is Tropical Depression 18E, which is now no longer expected to get named until Monday, while there's also Invest 94E with an 80% chance of formation. Needless to say, there is a possibility that 18E could degenerate into a remnant low if it doesn't get itself together soon. In the western Pacific, we have two Invests, 91W and 92W, but the good news is that both of them have 0% chance of formation. Needless to say, I was pretty shocked when these got invested, given the fact that there's really no support for any of these, and the environments are not good for either of these. In the North Indian Ocean, however, we are looking a bit active here, as there are two areas of interest to talk about here. One in the Arabian Sea, that's of Invest 90A, that has a 20% chance of formation as it moves northwards and makes a bit of a loop there. And then, of course, we also have another area of interest that could be a threat in the Bay of Bengal. Here's the latest National Hurricane Center forecast cone. We usually do the track forecast with the icons when there is 5 days of forecast at least, but in this case there's only 72 hours to go off by, and it is going to be bracing off pretty far to the north there. It's going to be around 57 degrees north by the time we do get into Monday evening, so needless to say, it is going to be accelerating quite rapidly. Some impacts are possible in the Ireland, UK area. So there you have it. There is the Atlantic satellite imagery, and you can see Wanda moving southwards over there. A few hundred miles west of the Azores. There's also those few disturbances that we've been seeing that have been causing some rainfall for the southeast US coast there. The eastern Pacific, you can see what's going on here. Invest 94E looking pretty solid in terms of development there, so the chances have continued to go up as a result. 18E, you will have to go back to the Atlantic satellite imagery, but it's going to be a little bit tough to spot there. In the western Pacific, you can see Invest 91W. It looks like it was trying to get some convection going along there, but it's not exactly doing the best. Some of the more recent frames have suggested that it pretty much lost all of that. 92W, it's literally just clouds. You can hardly tell. It's that little mass of clouds a few miles to the east of Philippines. So, quite surprising that even got designated. In the North Indian Ocean, you can see 90A as it continues to just sit there. It's expected to do quite the interesting 180 in a very slow and agonizingly painful way. Thankfully, it's not making any kind of landfall, that's for sure. And with Wanda, you can see it continuing to move southwards, not looking the greatest either. Pretty much of its convection is being stuck on one part of its system there. It's really kind of hard to describe what in the world is going on, because at this point Wanda is not even moving the normal direction it should be. But that's of course due to environmental conditions near it. Anyways, here's the eastern Pacific sea surface temperatures. It's around 27 to 28 throughout much of the eastern Pacific. Gulf of Mexico continues to cool, with temperatures being around 26 to 27 there. Main development region in Caribbean still at 27 to 28, although as you head more northwards, where Wanda currently is, it's around 21 to 23 degrees Celsius, depending on where it tracks over. So it's expected to see some little more warmer conditions that should help it strengthen somewhat, but other than that, temperatures remaining cool there. North Indian Ocean, Bay of Bengal still looking pretty warm, around 28 to 29, as the Arabian Sea looks around 27 to 28. In the western Pacific, the temperatures are still around 27 to 28, with temperatures near 29 as you head further south, and even some 30s as you head closer to the equator. Southern hemisphere still slowly warming up as we continue to get closer to where we start seeing the first storms develop. Moving onwards into the sea surface temperature anomalies, we're still watching that La Nina progress as a weak stage. In the Eastern Pacific, of course, the Atlantic still looking above average on all aspects. Eastern Pacific looking more spotty as you head westward. Central Pacific looking below average primarily. Western Pacific and North Indian Ocean, as well as much of the southwestern Indian Ocean, looking above average. On this day in 1996, we had Cyclone 7B, which would be a pretty catastrophic Category 4 landfall in India, while we also had 2 tropical storms in the Western Pacific. Tropical Storm Dale, which would eventually become a Category 5 super typhoon, and Tropical Storm Ernie, which was in the middle of impacting the Philippines. Of course, you can find more of our On This Day products powered by Cyclone History. The bottom bar is where that information is located, and you can find some more aspects about 7B when they post that at a later time, of course. Well, that brings us over to the next names. In the Atlantic, of course, we're out, which brings us to the first names of the auxiliary list. It's Adria and Braylon kicking that off. In the Eastern Pacific, we are still waiting for Sandra and Terry. And in the Central Pacific, don't expect a honey balloon at this year's Thanksgiving parade. In the Western Pacific, the next 2 names here are Nieto, followed by Ray. And in the North Indian Ocean, the next 2 names here are Jawad, followed by Asani. Going on over into the Southern Hemisphere, the first 2 names kicking off the Southwestern Indian Ocean list are Anna and Batsire. In the Australian region, looking up for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, we're looking up for Cody. We'll be back for the Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night. Keep in mind, we do wrap these up at the end of the month.